Malcolm-Jamal Warner had died at the age of 54. For many people, the name immediately brought back a familiar face. A teenager with an easy smile. A kid sitting at the kitchen table joking with his family. For years, millions of viewers had watched him play Theo Huxtable on The Cosby Show. For 8 seasons, he grew up in front of America. But the man behind that character lived a much longer and more complicated life than most people realized. After the show ended, he kept working. Acting, directing, writing music, performing spoken word. Quietly building a career that lasted more than 4 decades. He wasn't a headline-chasing celebrity. He kept his life private. He avoided scandals. He spoke carefully in interviews. Friends often described him as thoughtful, calm, and deeply reflective. Then, suddenly he was gone. Reports said he had been swimming while on vacation in Costa Rica when strong ocean currents pulled him underwater. What began as a peaceful trip ended in tragedy within minutes. Fans around the world mourned. Former cast members spoke publicly about their memories of him. Clips from The Cosby Show began circulating online again. People remembered the young actor who had once represented an entire generation of television viewers. But behind the public tributes was one person facing the loss in a much deeper way. His mother. Pamela Warner had been there from the very beginning. Long before the auditions. Before the fame. Before television audiences knew his name. She had raised him as a single mother. She had guided his career when he was still a child. She had protected him from an industry that can easily swallow young actors. And now she was the one speaking about the boy she had raised, the man he had become, and the sudden moment when everything stopped. To understand the weight of that loss, you have to go back to the beginning. Long before Hollywood, before television fame, before millions of viewers ever saw him on screen. Back to a child growing up with one determined mother who believed he could do something special. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was born in the state of New Jersey. His name carried meaning from the start. Malcolm was inspired by the civil rights leader Malcolm X. Jamal came from jazz pianist Ahmad Jamal. His mother chose those names carefully. She wanted her son to grow up understanding culture, art, and history. But raising a child alone wasn't easy. Pamela Warner worked hard to support them both. She was determined, organized, and protective. From the beginning, she paid close attention to Malcolm's interests. When he showed curiosity about performing and storytelling, she encouraged it. She enrolled him in acting classes while he was still young. Soon he was attending the Professional Children's School in New York City, a place where young performers balanced education with auditions and rehearsals. Pamela didn't just drive him to auditions. She managed every part of his early career. She read scripts. She negotiated opportunities. She watched closely for anything that didn't feel right. Many child actors have parents who push them too hard. Others have parents who stay distant. Pamela did something different. She stayed involved in every detail while still trying to give Malcolm a normal childhood. At home, he still had chores. Homework mattered. School came first. Auditions were simply another part of the schedule. But slowly, those auditions began leading somewhere. In the early 1980s, television producers were developing a new sitcom for NBC. The show would center around a successful African-American family living in Brooklyn. The father would be played by legendary comedian Bill Cosby. The project would eventually become The Cosby Show. For the role of Theo Huxtable, the producers needed a teenager who felt natural, funny, and believable as the son of the family. Hundreds of young actors auditioned. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was one of them. He walked into the audition room still a kid, still learning how the business worked. But something about his presence stood out. He wasn't overly polished. He wasn't trying too hard. His performance felt relaxed, almost like he was simply being himself. Bill Cosby reportedly saw something special right away. Soon after, Malcolm received the news that would change his life. He got the role. When The Cosby Show premiered in 1984, it became an instant success. The show quickly rose to the top of television ratings. Families across America gathered around their televisions every week. Theo Huxtable became one of the most recognizable teenagers in the country. For Malcolm, life changed almost overnight. He went from auditions and school assignments to sound stages, scripts, and national fame. But he was still just a teenager trying to figure out who he was. By the mid-1980s, The Cosby Show had become one of the biggest television programs in the United States. Every week, millions of viewers watched the Huxtable family navigate everyday life. Theo Huxtable was often at the center of those stories. The character struggled with school, made mistakes, argued with his parents, and tried to find his place in the world. For many young viewers, Theo felt real. But while audiences saw a fictional teenager growing up, Malcolm-Jamal Warner was going through those same years in real life. He balanced long filming days with schoolwork. Scripts had to be memorized while homework still needed to be completed. Meanwhile, the attention kept growing. Fans recognized him in airports, restaurants, and on city streets. Interviews started appearing in magazines. Talk shows invited him to appear. For a young actor, that kind of attention can be overwhelming. But Pamela Warner stayed close. She remained his manager and his protector. She monitored the schedule, watched over contracts, and kept reminding him of something simple. Television fame could disappear at any moment. What mattered more was who he became when the cameras stopped rolling. And one day, those cameras would eventually stop. In 1992, The Cosby Show came to an end. For 8 years, Malcolm-Jamal Warner had walked onto the same set, stood under the same lights, and played the same character. Theo Huxtable had become part of television history. But when the final episode aired, the routine that had shaped his teenage years suddenly stopped. For many young actors, this is where things fall apart. They spend their childhood working on one show, and when it ends, Hollywood moves on. Casting directors stop calling. Audiences only see the old character. Malcolm understood that risk. Instead of trying to chase another role exactly like Theo, he started looking for different kinds of work. He wanted to prove he could do more than play the funny teenage son on a sitcom. He began appearing in a variety of television projects. Guest roles, dramatic parts, smaller productions. He accepted work that allowed him to experiment and grow. One of the biggest steps came when he joined the sitcom Malcolm and Eddie, where he starred alongside comedian Eddie Griffin. The show premiered in the mid-1990s and gave Malcolm a completely different kind of role. This time, he wasn't the teenage kid of the family. He was an adult character navigating work, friendship, and everyday life. The show developed a loyal audience and ran for several seasons. For Malcolm, it proved something important. He wasn't stuck in the past. He could move forward. But acting wasn't the only thing he wanted to do. He started exploring directing. Working behind the camera gave him a new perspective on the industry he had grown up in. He directed episodes of television and began understanding the craft from another angle. At the same time, he developed another creative outlet: music. Spoken word poetry and jazz became a huge part of his life. On stage, he could express ideas that didn't always fit inside a television script. Friends noticed that Malcolm seemed calmer when he performed poetry or music. It allowed him to speak openly, in his own voice. Even as his career changed, one person stayed involved in the background: his mother, Pamela Warner. She had guided his career since he was a child, and even as he became an adult, her influence remained strong. She continued offering advice, helping him make decisions, and reminding him to keep control of his own path. As the 2000s arrived, Malcolm's career entered a quieter phase. He wasn't dominating television headlines anymore, but he was still working steadily. He appeared in a wide range of television series, often taking guest roles that showed different sides of his acting ability. Viewers saw him in crime dramas, comedies, and independent projects. One of his most notable later roles came on Read Between the Lines, where he starred alongside actress Tracee Ellis Ross. The show explored family life from a modern perspective, and Malcolm's performance reminded audiences how naturally he could bring warmth and intelligence to a character. Outside of television, he stayed deeply connected to music and spoken word. He performed at small venues, jazz clubs, and cultural festivals. Sometimes the crowds were small. Sometimes the audiences were large. It didn't matter much to him. Those performances felt personal. He spoke about identity, culture, relationships, and life as a former child actor navigating adulthood. Friends often described Malcolm as thoughtful and reflective during this time. He read constantly. He studied music. He surrounded himself with creative people rather than celebrity circles. He also became very protective of his private life. Unlike many actors who share every detail online, Malcolm rarely discussed his relationships or family in public interviews. He preferred to keep that part of his life away from the spotlight. But one relationship was always visible: his connection with his mother. Pamela Warner had watched him grow from a curious child into a successful adult. She had seen the pressures of Hollywood up close and knew how easily fame could change people. But Malcolm had managed to avoid many of those traps. He stayed grounded, he stayed working, and he stayed close to the woman who had helped guide him from the very beginning. In July of 2025, Malcolm-Jamal Warner traveled to Costa Rica. The trip wasn't connected to work. It was meant to be a break from his schedule, a chance to relax near the ocean and spend time away from the constant movement of the entertainment industry. Costa Rica is known for its beaches, rainforests, and powerful ocean waves. Tourists visit every year to surf, swim, and explore the coastline. On the day of the incident, the weather looked calm from the shore. People were walking along the sand. Others were already in the water. Malcolm entered the ocean to swim. At first, nothing seemed unusual. But ocean conditions can change quickly. Strong currents can form without warning, especially in areas where waves pull water back toward deeper sections of the sea. Witnesses later described swimmers beginning to struggle against the current. The water was moving faster than expected. People on the beach started noticing the situation. Some rushed toward the shoreline. Others tried to signal for help. Malcolm was one of the swimmers caught in the current. Those moments unfolded quickly. The powerful movement of the water made it difficult to reach safety. Rescue attempts began almost immediately. People nearby rushed into the water, trying to reach the swimmers and bring them back toward the beach. Soon Malcolm was pulled from the ocean and brought onto the sand. Emergency efforts began right there on the beach. CPR started as bystanders and responders tried to bring him back. Minutes passed. Then more minutes. The scene became quiet except for the sounds of rescue attempts continuing under the bright sun and the noise of the waves behind them. What had started as a peaceful day at the beach had turned into a fight to save a life. And the outcome would soon send shockwaves across the world. By the time Malcolm-Jamal Warner was pulled from the water, people on the beach already understood how serious the situation had become. Several bystanders rushed toward him immediately. Some had basic first aid training. Others simply reacted on instinct. Someone called for emergency services. Another person began CPR. Malcolm lay on the sand while rescuers worked quickly, trying to restore his breathing. The ocean waves continued rolling in behind them. A small crowd formed nearby, watching quietly. Minutes stretched longer than anyone expected. Witnesses later described how rescuers refused to stop. They kept going, switching positions, continuing chest compressions and rescue breaths. Paramedics eventually arrived and took over the effort. For a long time, they tried everything possible. But the situation had already moved beyond control. The official time of death was later confirmed. Malcolm-Jamal Warner was gone. For the people standing on the beach that day, it was a moment that felt unreal. Only hours earlier, he had been enjoying the same ocean everyone else had come to see. Now the scene had turned silent. The waves kept moving, but everything else felt frozen. Within hours, news organizations began reporting the story. Headlines appeared across television networks and major websites. Malcolm-Jamal Warner dead at 54. For many people, the first reaction was disbelief. Millions of viewers had grown up watching him on The Cosby Show. For them, Theo Huxtable was more than just a character. He represented an entire era of television. Social media filled with clips from the show. Old scenes began circulating again. Theo joking with his sisters, arguing with his father, learning life lessons in the Huxtable living room. Former cast members began sharing their memories. Actors who had worked with him described him as thoughtful, disciplined, and deeply respectful on set. Many said he was one of the rare child stars who managed to grow into adulthood without losing himself in the chaos of fame. Tributes also came from musicians and spoken-word artists who had performed with him over the years. They remembered his love for jazz. They remembered the way he spoke poetry on stage with a calm, steady rhythm. Fans from different generations posted messages describing how much his work had meant to them growing up. Television networks began airing reruns of The Cosby Show, allowing audiences to revisit the character that first made him famous. Behind all of those tributes, however, The people closest to him were dealing with something much heavier: grief. And among them was the woman who had been beside him since the very beginning. After the tragedy, Pamela Warner stayed mostly out of the public spotlight. Friends and family gathered privately to support one another. Messages of sympathy arrived from actors, fans, and people who had known Malcolm throughout his life. Eventually, Pamela decided to speak. When she finally addressed the loss of her son, her words were simple and direct. She talked about the day Malcolm was born. She remembered the energy he had as a child. Curious, talkative, always asking questions about the world around him. She described how he became interested in acting at a young age. She remembered the first auditions, the early acting classes, and the long drives to casting offices. Those early years had been uncertain. She had taken a risk helping him pursue a career in entertainment. Hollywood can be a difficult place for young performers. Many children lose themselves in the pressure. But Malcolm had stayed focused. Pamela explained that her job had always been to protect him. She read every contract. She sat in on meetings. She watched closely as the industry tried to shape the young actor her son was becoming. When the Cosby Show became a massive success, she knew his life had changed forever. Fame had arrived faster than anyone expected. Still, she reminded him constantly that television characters were temporary. What mattered more was the person he became when the cameras were off. Years later, she watched him build a life beyond the show. Acting, directing, music, spoken word. He had grown into the kind of thoughtful adult she had hoped he would become. When she spoke about the day she learned he was gone, her voice reportedly slowed. She described receiving the call. The moment felt impossible to understand. A mother is not supposed to outlive her child. Yet she also spoke about something else: pride. She said Malcolm had lived a full life. He had worked hard, stayed true to himself, and treated people with respect. For Pamela Warner, the memories of the boy she raised were stronger than the tragedy that ended his life.